Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The cafe was buzzing with life that evening. It was one of those trendy places that attracted all kinds of people, students with their textbooks splayed across tables, couples engrossed in each other, and friends catching up over overpriced coffee. The dim lighting and soft jazz music created an intimate atmosphere, perfect for quiet conversations and secretive glances. I sat across from Sarah, my wife of 4 years. She was beautiful in a timeless way, dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her green eyes sparkling under the soft lights, and that smile she always had, the one that made you believe everything was right in the world. But that evening, something felt different. There was a tension in the air between us, a slight unease that I couldn't quite place. "So, how was your day?" I asked, trying to shake off the feeling. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, just the usual. Meetings, deadlines, the never-ending cycle." I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee, trying to find a way to bridge the gap that seemed to have formed between us. Before I could think of something to say, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it quickly and her expression changed, a flash of something I couldn't quite identify, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. She picked up her phone and in a quick motion, hid the screen from my view as she typed a response. My curiosity piqued, I casually leaned forward, pretending to stretch. "Who's texting you at this hour?" I asked, keeping my tone light, playful even. "Oh, just work stuff," she said, but her voice was too casual, too practiced. She slid her phone back into her bag with a nervous flick of her wrist, but not before I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen. My heart skipped a beat. It was my father's name. My father and I weren't exactly close. He'd always been distant, the kind of man who valued work over family, and growing up, I'd learned to live with his absence. We spoke occasionally, out of a sense of duty more than anything else. So, seeing his name flash across my wife's phone at that moment threw me off balance. But then, I told myself it had to be a coincidence. After all, Michael is a common name. Still, the feeling of unease gnawed at me. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked, her eyes searching mine. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just a bit tired, I guess." She reached across the table and took my hand, her touch warm and familiar, but it did little to calm the storm brewing inside me. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of small talk and forced laughter, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying that moment over and over. By the time we left the cafe and headed home, I had convinced myself that I was being paranoid. After all, what were the chances that my wife was texting my father of all people? It was ridiculous. Or so I thought. A few days later, I found myself standing outside my mother's house. She was away for a month, taking time for herself at a sanatorium, a much-needed break she had been planning for ages. I had decided to drop by and check on the place, make sure everything was in order. As I walked up the driveway, something felt off. The curtains were drawn, unusual for a house that was supposed to be empty. I approached the door cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear faint sounds from inside, voices, muffled but unmistakable. A part of me wanted to turn around and leave, pretend I hadn't heard anything. But curiosity got the better of me. I twisted the doorknob quietly, relieved to find it unlocked. As I stepped inside, the voices grew clearer. It was a man's voice, low and familiar, followed by a woman's laughter. My heart stopped. That laugh, it was Sarah's. I moved silently through the house, following the sound up the stairs to the master bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and as I approached, I could see them. My wife, half naked, sitting on top of a man who was lying on the bed, his face hidden from view. My blood ran cold. It wasn't until I stepped closer that I recognized the man beneath her. It was my father. For a moment, the world around me shattered into a million pieces. The scene in front of me was surreal, like something out of a nightmare. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat as I tried to process what I was seeing. Sarah gasped when she noticed me standing in the doorway. She scrambled off him, grabbing at the sheets to cover herself, her face pale with shock. My father sat up, his expression unreadable, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. "What the hell is this?" I spat, my voice shaking with a fury I had never felt before. Sarah opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked terrified, like a deer caught in headlights. My father, on the other hand, seemed composed, as if he had been expecting this moment. He slowly stood up, the sheets falling away to reveal his bare chest. "I can explain," he began, but I wasn't interested in hearing any excuses. "Get out," I snarled, my voice barely above a whisper. "Both of you. Get the hell out of my sight." Sarah hesitated, tears welling up in her eyes. "Please, let me explain." I said get out. I roared, the sound echoing through the house. They both moved quickly then, grabbing their clothes and heading for the door, their heads hung low. I didn't follow them. I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, none of which made any sense. When the door finally slammed shut behind them, I collapsed onto the bed, the scent of her perfume still lingering in the air. I felt numb, disconnected from reality, as if the person who had just witnessed that scene wasn't me, but someone else entirely. It took a long time for the anger to replace the numbness. And when it did, it burned through me like wildfire. They had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and for that, they would pay. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to make sure that Sarah regretted this. She had destroyed my life, and now, I would destroy hers. This was just the beginning. The sound of my own footsteps echoes through the empty house as I pace the living room, my thoughts racing. It's been hours since I threw Sarah and my father out, but the fury inside me hasn't subsided. Instead, it's simmering just beneath the surface, waiting for an outlet. I know I need to talk to someone, anyone, before I do something rash. My mind drifts to my best friend, Jason. He's the kind of guy who always knows what to do, the calm to my storm. Without thinking twice, I grab my keys and head out the door, the cool night air doing little to cool the fire burning inside me. Jason's place is only a short drive away, but every second feels like an eternity. By the time I pull up to his apartment, I'm practically shaking with rage. I take a deep breath, trying to steady myself before heading up to his door. I don't even bother knocking. Jason's known me long enough to know that when I show up unannounced, something's seriously wrong. I push the door open and find him in the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge. "Hey, man," he says, glancing over his shoulder with a grin that fades the moment he sees my face. "What the hell happened to you?" I close the door behind me with a little too much force, the sound reverberating through the small apartment. "I need a drink," I mutter, my voice thick with barely suppressed anger. Jason grabs a couple of beers from the fridge and hands one to me without a word. He knows better than to push for answers before I'm ready. We sit down at the small kitchen table, and I down half the bottle in one go, the cold liquid doing nothing to douse the flames inside me. "So," Jason starts cautiously, "you gonna tell me what's going on, or do I have to guess?" I stare at the bottle in my hands, the label peeling slightly at the edges. "She's cheating on me," I say finally, my voice flat. Jason raises an eyebrow. "Sarah? Are you sure?" I let out a bitter laugh. "I caught her, Jason. I walked in on her with another man." Jason winces, sympathy etched on his face. "Damn, man. I'm so sorry. Who was it? Some random guy?" I look up at him, my jaw clenched so tightly it hurts. "It was my father." Jason's eyes widen in shock. He's speechless for a moment, trying to process what I've just told him. "Your father? Are you serious?" I nod, my hands trembling as I set the bottle down. Yeah. I saw them together at my mom's house. He's been screwing my wife behind my back. Holy shit, Jason breathes, leaning back in his chair. That's... I don't even know what to say. That's messed up on so many levels. No kidding, I reply, the rage bubbling up again. I kicked them both out. I couldn't even look at them. But now, I don't know what to do. I can't just let this slide, Jason. They betrayed me, and they're going to pay for it. Jason studies me carefully, his expression serious. Look, I get that you're pissed, and you have every right to be. But before you do anything, you need to think this through. Don't do something you'll regret later. I've already made up my mind, I say, my voice hardening. I'm going to make sure she regrets ever crossing me. Jason leans forward, lowering his voice as if the walls might have ears. Alright, but if you're serious about this, you need a plan. You can't just go off half-cocked. You need to be smart about it. I nod slowly, knowing he's right. I've been thinking about that. I need to hit her where it hurts, make her life as miserable as she's made mine. Jason takes a sip of his beer, considering my words. You know, Sarah's career is everything to her. If something were to happen at work. A wicked smile tugs at the corners of my mouth. Yeah, I've thought about that. She's been working on some big project, something she's been obsessing over for months. If I could sabotage it. Jason nods, his eyes narrowing as he thinks. And what about your father? You just going to let him off the hook? My smile fades as the anger flares up again. No. He's going to pay too. But first, I'm going to deal with Sarah. She's the one who brought this into our marriage. I'll figure out how to handle him later. Jason sits back, crossing his arms over his chest. Alright, so what's the plan? The next day, I call in sick to work. There's no way I can focus on anything other than what needs to be done. I spend the morning gathering information, going through Sarah's things, looking for anything I can use against her. It doesn't take long to find what I'm looking for, a flash drive with all her work files on it, carelessly left in her desk drawer. By the time evening rolls around, I've got a plan in place. I'm going to destroy that project she's been working so hard on. I know enough about her work to do some real damage, and I'm not above doing whatever it takes to make sure she loses everything she's worked for. I drive to Jason's place again, knowing I'll need his help to pull this off. He's waiting for me when I arrive, the grim determination in his eyes mirroring my own. You ready for this? He asks as I step inside. More than ready, I reply, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. We sit down at his computer, and I plug in the flash drive. It's filled with files, documents, spreadsheets, presentations, all the evidence I need to bring Sarah's career crashing down. Jason works quickly, planting viruses in the files, corrupting data, making it all but impossible for her to salvage the project. As we work, I feel a twisted sense of satisfaction growing inside me. This is what she deserves, I tell myself. This is payback for everything she's done. When we're finished, I take the flash drive back home, careful to put it exactly where I found it. Sarah will never know what hit her. 2 days later, I'm at home when I get the call. It's Sarah, her voice frantic and panicked on the other end of the line. Everything's gone, she sobs, barely able to get the words out. All my files, all my work. It's all corrupted. I don't know what happened. I lean back in my chair, a cold smile spreading across my face. That's terrible, I say, my voice dripping with false concern. How could something like that happen? I don't know, she cries, clearly on the verge of a breakdown. I'm going to lose everything, Mark. My job, my reputation. That's really unfortunate, I reply, the satisfaction in my voice barely concealed. But maybe it's for the best. After all, things haven't exactly been great between us lately, have they? There's a long pause on the other end of the line, and when she speaks again, her voice is trembling. "Mark, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe this is what you deserve," I reply coldly. "You brought this on yourself, Sarah. You thought you could betray me and get away with it. Think again." She's silent, and I can almost hear the gears turning in her head as she tries to figure out what I've done. But I don't give her the chance. "I want you out of the house by the end of the week," I say, my voice firm. "I'm filing for divorce. And if you try to fight me on this, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." "Mark, please," she begs, but I've already made up my mind. "Goodbye, Sarah," I say, ending the call and cutting off her desperate pleas. As I sit there, the silence of the house enveloping me, I feel a strange sense of calm wash over me. The deed is done. The first step in my plan for revenge is complete. But even as I revel in my victory, I know this is far from over. My father is next. And when I'm finished with him, he'll wish he'd never crossed me. The days following my call with Sarah are filled with a quiet, calculated anticipation. The storm inside me has subsided, replaced by a cold resolve. I've hurt her, just as she hurt me, but I'm not done yet. I still have one more score to settle. My father. I can't stop thinking about him, his face, his voice, the way he had the nerve to stand there, bare-chested, in front of me, after everything he'd done. The image haunts me, fueling the anger I've kept burning just beneath the surface. It's late in the afternoon when I finally make up my mind. I need to confront him, to look him in the eyes and make him pay for what he's done. I grab my jacket, my keys, and head out the door. My destination is clear, my father's office. He's the CEO of a mid-sized company, a man who's always been too busy for his family. But today, he's going to have to make time for me. I arrive at his office building, a sleek, glass structure that stands tall in the heart of the city. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the lobby as I step inside. The receptionist looks up as I approach, her professional smile faltering when she sees the look on my face. "Good evening, sir. How can I help you?" "I'm here to see Michael West." "Tell him it's his son, Mark." She hesitates, glancing at the clock on the wall. "Mr. West is in a meeting right now. Perhaps you could." "Tell him I'm here," I cut her off, my tone leaving no room for argument. "I won't take no for an answer." The receptionist swallows nervously and picks up the phone. I watch her as she speaks in a low voice, her eyes darting nervously to me as she relays the message. After a moment, she hangs up and nods. "He'll see you now," she says quietly, pointing me toward the elevators. I make my way up to the top floor, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and anticipation. The doors slide open, revealing a corridor lined with glass walls. At the end of the hall, I see my father's office, a large, imposing room with a view of the city skyline. I push the door open without knocking. He's standing by the window, his back to me, staring out at the city below. The room is bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, casting long shadows across the polished wood floor. He doesn't turn around when I enter, but I know he heard me. "Mark," he says finally, his voice calm and measured. "I was wondering when you'd show up." I close the door behind me, the sound echoing in the quiet room. "I'm here now. We need to talk." He sighs, still not turning to face me. "I know what this is about. But I need you to understand." "No," I cut him off, my voice hard and unforgiving. "You don't get to explain. You don't get to justify what you did. You betrayed me, Dad. You slept with my wife." Finally, he turns around, his face composed, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes, guilt, maybe? Regret? I don't care. "Mark, it wasn't supposed to happen this way," he says, his voice softening. "Sarah and I, we never meant to hurt you." I laugh, but there's no humor in it. Oh, really? So what, it was just a mistake. A little fling that got out of hand. He doesn't answer, and that tells me everything I need to know. You're pathetic, I spit, taking a step closer. I always knew you were a selfish bastard, but this is a new low, even for you. Mark, he begins, but I don't let him finish. I'm done with you, I say, my voice shaking with anger. I'm done with both of you. You think you can just walk away from this? Think again. He watches me carefully, his expression unreadable. What are you going to do, Mark? I take a deep breath, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. I'm going to ruin you, just like I ruined Sarah. You're going to lose everything, Dad, your reputation, your company, your life. You think you're untouchable, but you're not. You're going to pay for what you did. He shakes his head slowly, almost sadly. This isn't you, Mark. You're angry, and I understand that, but don't let it consume you. Revenge won't bring you peace. Peace? I scoff. I don't want peace. I want justice. And I'm going to make sure you get exactly what you deserve. For a moment, we just stand there, the tension between us so thick you could cut it with a knife. I half expect him to fight back, to tell me I'm making a mistake, but he doesn't. Instead, he just looks at me with those cold, calculating eyes, the same eyes that have always made me feel like I was never good enough. I see, he says finally, his voice quiet. You've made up your mind, then. Yes, I reply, my voice steady. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. He nods slowly, as if he's resigned to his fate. Very well. But remember this, Mark, once you start down this path, there's no turning back. You'll lose yourself in the process. Is that really what you want? His words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I don't let it show. I've already lost everything that mattered, I say coldly. Now it's your turn. I turn on my heel and walk out of his office, slamming the door behind me. My heart is pounding, adrenaline coursing through my veins, but there's a hollow feeling in the pit of my stomach that I can't shake. That night, I lie in bed, staring up at the ceiling. My mind is racing, replaying the events of the day over and over again. Part of me is satisfied, after all, I finally stood up to him. But another part of me feels empty, like I've crossed a line I can never uncross. The next morning, I wake up with a renewed sense of purpose. I can't dwell on the past, I need to focus on what comes next. I spend the day making phone calls, setting things in motion. I contact a few people I know in the business world, people who've been waiting for a chance to take my father down a peg. It doesn't take much convincing, they've all got their own grudges against him, and they're more than happy to help. By the end of the day, the pieces are in place. I've planted the seeds of doubt in the right minds, set the wheels of rumor and speculation in motion. It's only a matter of time before the whispers turn into full-blown accusations, before the board of directors starts questioning his leadership. As I hang up the phone after my final call, I feel a strange sense of satisfaction. It's not the same as before, there's no thrill, no rush of adrenaline. Instead, it's a cold, calculated satisfaction, the kind that comes from knowing you've outmaneuvered your enemy. I lean back in my chair, my thoughts drifting to Sarah. I wonder what she's doing right now, whether she's realized the full extent of what I've done to her. Part of me hopes she's suffering, that she's drowning in the chaos I've created. But another part of me wonders if she's moved on, if she's already found someone else to replace me. The thought makes my stomach turn, and I push it aside. I can't afford to think about her now. I need to stay focused, to see this through to the end. The next few days pass in a blur of activity. The rumors I've planted start to take root, spreading through the company like wildfire. I hear through the grapevine that the board is calling an emergency meeting, that they're starting to question my father's decisions, his competence. It's exactly what I wanted. But as the day of the meeting approaches, I start to feel a sense of unease. This is what I've been working toward, what I've been planning for, but now that it's within reach, I'm not sure if it's enough. Will this really satisfy me? Will it really make up for everything he's done? The morning of the meeting, I receive a text from an unknown number. It's short, just a single line, but it sends a chill down my spine. We need to talk. Meet me at the cafe. I stare at the screen, my heart pounding. It doesn't say who it's from, but I have a sinking feeling I know exactly who it is. When I arrive at the cafe, the same one where this nightmare began, I spot her immediately. Sarah is sitting at a table in the corner, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, her eyes distant and unfocused. She looks different, tired, worn down, like she's been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. I hesitate for a moment, then walk over and sit down across from her. She looks up at me, her expression unreadable. "Mark," she says quietly. "I'm glad you came." "I got your message," I reply, my voice colder than I intended. "What do you want?" She takes a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I need to talk to you. About everything." "There's nothing left to talk about," I say, my tone hard. "You made your choices, and now you're dealing with the consequences." "I know," she whispers, her voice cracking. "But there's something you don't know. Something I need to tell you before it's too late." I narrow my eyes, suspicion gnawing at me. "What are you talking about?" She looks down at her coffee, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of whatever she's carrying is too much to bear. "It wasn't just an affair, Mark. There's more to it than that. And if you keep going down this path, you're going to destroy everything, for both of us." My heart skips a beat, a sense of dread settling in the pit of my stomach. "What do you mean, Sarah? What are you hiding?" She meets my gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and desperation. "Please, Mark. Just listen to me." For the first time in weeks, I feel the fire inside me waver, replaced by a growing sense of unease. Whatever she's about to tell me, I know it's going to change everything. And in that moment, I realize that this nightmare is far from over. The tension between Sarah and me hangs thick in the air, the weight of unspoken words pressing down on us both. I sit across from her, my hands clenched into fists beneath the table, trying to brace myself for whatever revelation she's about to drop. The cafe is quiet, the usual buzz of conversation replaced by a heavy silence that feels almost suffocating. "What is it, Sarah?" I finally ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "What haven't you told me?" She takes a deep breath, her eyes flicking nervously around the room before settling back on me. "Mark, before I tell you, you need to know that I never wanted this to happen. I didn't plan for any of this." "Just spit it out," I snap, the impatience and frustration boiling over. "I'm done with the games." She swallows hard, her voice trembling as she speaks. "The affair, it started months ago. But it wasn't just an affair. It was," she hesitates, as if searching for the right words. "It was more complicated than that." What could possibly be more complicated than screwing my father behind my back? I ask, my tone dripping with venom. Her face pales, and she looks down at her hands, twisting the coffee cup in her grip. "He approached me first, Mark. Your father. It started as a business arrangement." I blink, caught off guard. "Business arrangement? What the hell are you talking about?" She looks up, tears welling in her eyes. "He found out something about you, something from your past. He knew you were digging into his affairs, looking for ways to undermine him. And he thought you were a threat to his company." A cold chill runs down my spine. "So what, he blackmailed you? Used you to get to me?" "No, it wasn't like that," she says quickly, shaking her head. "At first, it was just information. He wanted me to keep an eye on you, to report back to him if you did anything that might hurt the company." "And you agreed?" I ask, incredulous. You agreed to spy on me, to betray me for him. Her eyes well with tears as she continues, I didn't have a choice, Mark. He threatened to ruin me, to destroy my career if I didn't cooperate. And I thought if I just did what he wanted, he'd leave us alone. But then things got complicated. Complicated? I spit, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. You mean you started sleeping with him? She flinches at my words, the tears now streaming down her face. Yes, she whispers, barely audible. But it wasn't just about that. It was about control, manipulation. He wanted to control you, to keep you under his thumb. And he used me to do it. I lean back in my chair, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fall into place. So, this was all just a power play? A way for him to keep me in line? She nods, her shoulders slumping as the weight of her confession bears down on her. I didn't want to hurt you, Mark. I thought I could keep him satisfied, keep him from going after you. But then I started to care for him, too. And everything spiraled out of control. I stare at her, disbelief warring with the anger bubbling up inside me. You expect me to believe that? That you were just some pawn in his game? It's the truth, she says, her voice cracking. And I know I'm to blame for a lot of it. But Mark, there's something else you need to know. Something I didn't realize until it was too late. I narrow my eyes, my patience wearing thin. What now, Sarah? What other bombshell are you about to drop? She wipes at her tears, her voice steadying as she continues. You were right to suspect that something was off. But it wasn't just about the affair. There's more, about your father. He's been hiding something that goes beyond our relationship. What are you talking about? I ask, my heart pounding in my chest. Your father, she says slowly, as if trying to make sure I understand, has been siphoning money from the company. Embezzling, for years. He's been using offshore accounts, fake contracts. It's all in the files I gave him. I freeze, my mind reeling from the revelation. How do you know this? I found out by accident, she says, her voice growing quieter. He let something slip once, a detail about a deal that didn't add up. I started digging, and I found the evidence. I tried to confront him, but he threatened me, told me that if I said anything, he'd ruin me, and you. I shake my head, trying to process what she's saying. And you didn't think to tell me any of this before? I was scared, Mark, she cries, her desperation clear. I didn't know what to do. I was in too deep, and by the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. He has too much power, too many people in his pocket. But you need to know this before you go after him. I stand up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. Enough, Sarah. I don't care about your excuses or your justifications. You're just as guilty as he is. You both played me for a fool, and now you're going to pay for it. Mark, please, she starts, but I cut her off. No, we're done here, I say coldly. You and I are finished. I never want to see you again. I turn to leave, but she grabs my arm, her voice pleading. Mark, wait. Please, listen to me. You're in danger. If you go after him now, he'll destroy you. You can't beat him at his own game. He's too powerful. I pull my arm free, glaring at her. I don't care. He's going down, one way or another. And when this is all over, I'll make sure you get what's coming to you, too. With that, I storm out of the cafe, leaving her behind. Her words echo in my mind, but I shove them aside. She's just trying to manipulate me again, to save her own skin. But it won't work. I'm done playing their games. The next day, I find myself standing outside my father's office building once again. This time, though, I'm not here to talk. I'm here to end this, once and for all. I make my way up to his office, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and determination. The receptionist tries to stop me, but I brush past her, pushing open the door to his office without knocking. He's sitting at his desk, going over some papers, and looks up in surprise when I burst in. "Mark," he says calmly, setting the papers aside. "What's this about?" "I know what you've been doing," I say, my voice low and dangerous. "The embezzlement, the fake contracts. I know everything." His expression doesn't change, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes, fear, maybe. He leans back in his chair, folding his hands in his lap. "I see Sarah's been talking. I warned her not to involve you in this." "Why? Because you're scared I'll bring you down?" I challenge, stepping closer to his desk. "No, because I didn't want you to get hurt," he replies smoothly, as if that explains everything. "Mark, this is more complicated than you realize. You're dealing with forces you can't control. Don't patronize me," I snap. "You've been stealing from your own company, using your son's wife as a pawn in your sick games. You think I'm just going to stand by and let you get away with that?" He sighs, rubbing a hand over his face. "You don't understand. I did what I had to do to protect our family. To protect you. If you just stayed out of it." "Protect me?" I interrupt, my voice rising. "By ruining my life? By sleeping with my wife?" "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he says, his voice tired. "But now, you've left me no choice." Before I can react, he reaches into his desk drawer and pulls out a small pistol, aiming it at me with a steady hand. My blood runs cold as I stare down the barrel, my heart racing. "Dad," I say slowly, trying to keep my voice calm, "you don't want to do this." "I don't want to, but you're leaving me no choice," he replies, his voice hardening. "You've always been too stubborn for your own good, Mark. You don't know when to let things go. You're going to kill your own son?" I ask, disbelief flooding through me. "For what? Money? Power?" "For survival," he says simply. "If you take me down, you'll take the whole family with you. I can't let that happen." I swallow hard, my mind racing. I need to find a way out of this, to disarm him before he pulls the trigger. But before I can make a move, the door behind me bursts open, and Sarah rushes in, her face pale with fear. "Michael, stop," she screams, running toward us. "Don't do this." He turns the gun on her, his expression darkening. "Sarah, stay out of this. You've caused enough trouble. Please," she begs, her voice breaking. "He's your son. Don't do this." I seize the moment of distraction, lunging forward and grabbing for the gun. We struggle, the weapon clattering to the floor as we wrestle for control. I manage to shove him back, but he's stronger than I expected, and he quickly regains his footing. "Mark!" Sarah screams, but I'm too focused on the fight to pay attention. In the chaos, my father grabs the gun from the floor, but before he can aim it at me, Sarah throws herself between us, her eyes wide with terror. "Stop it, both of you," she cries, tears streaming down her face. "This has to end." But it's too late. The gun goes off with a deafening bang, and Sarah gasps, a look of shock on her face as she crumples to the floor. "Sarah!" I scream, dropping to my knees beside her. Blood pools beneath her, her eyes glassy and unfocused. She tries to speak, but no words come out, just a soft, gurgling sound. "Sarah, stay with me," I beg, my voice trembling. "Please, don't leave me." But she's already gone. I look up at my father, who's staring at the scene with a look of horror on his face, the gun hanging limply in his hand. "What have you done?" I whisper, my voice breaking. He drops the gun, taking a step back as if the reality of what he's done is just now hitting him. "Mark, I didn't mean to." I can't hear him. I can't think. All I can see is Sarah's lifeless body, all I can feel is the crushing weight of guilt and loss. In that moment, everything falls apart. My father is taken away by the police, the gun still in his hand as he mutters incoherently about how it wasn't supposed to be like this. I'm left sitting beside Sarah's body, my heart shattered into a million pieces. The aftermath is a blur of police sirens, flashing lights, and endless questions. I answer them all mechanically, my mind numb with shock. It's only later, when I'm alone in the house we once shared, that the reality of what's happened finally sinks in. Sarah is dead. My father is in jail, awaiting trial for her murder. And I'm left alone, with nothing but the ashes of what used to be my life. There's no satisfaction in any of it. No sense of victory or justice. Just an overwhelming sense of loss and regret. The revenge I'd sought so desperately has cost me everything, my wife, my family, my future. In the end, I've lost more than I ever imagined. And as I sit in the darkness, the weight of it all pressing down on me, I realize that the hatred I felt for them, the desire for revenge, has left me with nothing but emptiness. Sarah's betrayal, my father's manipulation, it's all led to this. And now, as I stare into the void, I know that there's no going back. Our paths have diverged, forever separated by a chasm of deceit, hatred, and death. And as I sit in the silence, I can't help but wonder if any of it was worth it.